Interest in national politics has, in the eyes of many, spiked since the onset of the 2016 presidential campaign. Back here in Hudson, however, the story of local interaction with government is a much less clear-cut one. In this special series, we sat down with members of the Democratic and Republican town committees to talk about the intersection of those national and political narratives in living rooms and meeting halls here in town. We start with Jane Chertoff, joined by Kathy Ekdahl of the Democratic Town Committee. Take a look.
But politics hasn't been this town has never been very political. One of the goals that we have is to make people more aware that we exist and try to get them more involved in a variety of issues, backing candidates. And as Kathy said, politics is local, and in a time when we feel really helpless.
Yeah.
In terms of changing things nationally, at least we can start here.
As long as it had, in the words of Chertoff, bucked those national trends of political engagement, a recent surge in Hudson's political interest did, in fact, coincide with the 2016 election, and, in particular, a contentious protest in October of 2016 organized by members of the Democratic Town Committee.
I remember the day that the Access Hollywood tape came out. I was appalled that someone would speak like that about a woman. And I just started this grassroots thing where I created a Facebook group for about 250 people. And we gathered people together for this protest in Hudson. And really what we were saying was, this kind of talk, this misogyny, this hateful rhetoric has got to go. It wasn't necessarily pro-Hillary or anti-Trump. It was just about the way that the campaign was running. And, we had 15 people show up, and somehow the Tea Party got a word that we were having this protest, and we had somewhere, I would say, between 60 to 80 Tea Party protesters come out against us. So that was kind of the start of my activism, and I did it for myself and my friends and other women our age. I just didn't feel that kind of talk was appropriate for any campaign. So that was kind of what started the ball rolling for me.
That, however, was 2016. 2 years later, after national controversies in Washington helped energize voters back in Hudson, the Democratic Town Committee events around this year's midterm election involved far more than the 15 protesters at Ekdahl's October 2016 march. Most notably, the committee packed the function hall at the Hudson Portuguese Club in February of this year for a forum of over a dozen Democratic candidates vying to replace Hudson's U.S. Representative, Nikki Tsongas. As the protest in 2016 had started some community conversations, Chertoff noted that the forum might have started even more.
There is a group of people at Sauter Farm who, they were all from like Sudbury and Acton, and Sauter Farm is the over 55 community. But nobody talked about politics. And people from Sauter Farm who went individually to the forum looked around and said, hey, these are our people. And they formed this really tight-knit group that met regularly to talk about politics, which was a wonderful thing as a result.
With those conversations raging, Hudson voters packed the polls in the recent midterm elections at abnormally high rates for such a midterm. After seeing those local voters in turn help voters across the country hand Democrats a majority in the House of Representatives, committee members like Ekdahl and Chertoff are excited for the coming years and the work they hope to do to maintain the engagement they've fostered over the last two election cycles.
I noticed, and I've only been a member of the committee for a very short time, that there was a big uptick in involvement, and now the elections are over and things kind of fade, but if we have issues we're working on and projects we're working on and people feel like there's a concrete goal they're working on, more education, more involvement, and we've always been issue-oriented, where in smaller issues, like I said, this immigration forum, which Jane and a bunch of us helped organize in Framingham, that was really phenomenal, because it was the beginning of understanding this immigration crisis and how we reform, some of the problems in our country. So, projects, issues, and involvement, more people getting involved.
And one of the other things we've talked about is making Hudson, I don't think safe community is the correct vocabulary now, but turning it into that officially. So.
Good to hear again from Jane Chertoff and Cassidy Ekdahl of the Democratic Town Committee. We go now to Chuck Kunowicz of the Republican Town Committee for his insight on the political landscape of Hudson and the impact of those 2018 midterms and the key issues he and his group foresee dominating their work over the next 2 years.
Once again, everyone is so busy they don't have time to designate the time to the volunteerism that those of us on the committee do. But they are there and they do care. At Hudson Fest we set up a booth every year, and it's interesting, the people who do come by to the booth and tell us about what they've seen and experienced and the things they care about, and it shows us that the townspeople of Hudson are definitely more engaged. But that's not to say that there isn't a whole lot more room for improvement.
Operating in such a landscape in Hudson, Kunowicz and the Republican Town Committee most prominently run a monthly meeting called Civics Matters, with the goal of challenging local residents to broaden their perspectives on any number of political issues.
Generally it's local, but sometimes it's state and national. Last month every November we do our Seasons and Reasons to be Thankful. Normally we bring in a legal immigrant who is either in the process of becoming an American citizen or plans to, and talk about what their life was like, where it was, and more importantly, why they're happy to be here and what they're grateful for, and to remind us of the things that we take for granted and what we should be grateful for. This month instead, we brought in 3 local charities. We brought in Andrew's Helpful Hands, we brought in the Food Pantry, and we brought in an organization called Birthright, which helps moms who don't want to terminate their pregnancy, but they need help, so it helps them with diapers and those kinds of basic needs. So, and that's the good work going on right in our own town that a lot of people aren't even aware of.
The Republican Town Committee's work does not, however, end with their Civics Matters event. Twice a year, prior to each town meeting, the group holds sessions with town officials to help members understand and form opinions on town meeting articles prior to the vote.
At town meeting, we're not just blindly following the Finance Committee's recommendations. We have an understanding of what the issues were, and we're actually very confident and happy about our votes when we do them at town meeting because it's an informed vote.
All that is work the committee did before those 2018 midterms and will continue to do in the future. Likewise, supporting candidates as they did in several cases throughout these recent campaigns was and will remain a central pillar of the committee's work. For all that remained unchanged in how the committee has done its work in 2018, however, this year represented an anomaly in how local voters responded to that work, according to Kunowicz.
But this year was particularly interesting because it was very clear to me that the people, not only in Hudson, but across the state, were not interested in making a hiring decision of who the best person for the job was. They instead wanted to use their vote as an opportunity to express their displeasure with the president and ipso facto Republicans in general. And that's why really good quality candidates who ran got the standard Republican vote, because it was the diehards who would vote for them no matter what, whose vote they got. And anyone who would normally consider themselves an open-minded person wasn't going to vote for that person because they shared the Republican designation.
Going forward, Kunowicz hopes these perceptions of the meaning and purpose of a vote can change. Beyond that, he hopes perhaps even more that he and his fellow volunteers can change the much broader public perception of Republicans in what is a currently heavily polarized political environment.
Well, I want to prove to the townspeople of Hudson that Republicans are not some alien creature, that Republicans do care about the air that we all breathe, the water that we all drink, and that we care about everyone. It's true that some people's hearts aren't big enough to love more than one person, but it is amazing how many people, Republicans included, whose hearts are big enough to love everybody.
A big thanks to all of the activists we interviewed in those two packages. You can learn more about both the Democratic and Republican town committees by visiting their respective Facebook pages. Through those accounts, you can also keep tabs on upcoming events hosted by both groups.